I came to find myself alone in a hotel room with a married man. When it comes to sex before marriage, what's right, what's wrong? I did some things right and I did many things wrong. I'm Dr. Carol and I want to talk about that. Even in the church, there are real differences of opinion about this. I grew up in an environment where I heard the purity narrative that sex is for marriage, it's a good thing in marriage, and unless you're married, don't. That it was sinful outside of marriage and good inside of marriage. And I had heard that and made the decision I was not going to have sex unless I was married. And I made it. I made it to my wedding not having had sex. But I did many things wrong. The stuff going on in my heart under the surface through all of that time was seriously messed up. I grew up in an environment where, along with the church stuff, I did not see healthy intimacy modeled in my family, in the people around me, so I didn't have a good picture. I put up really big walls around my heart. I spent many years wanting to be married and wondering what was so wrong with me. I never had any serious long-term romantic relationships that could have ended up in marriage. And I really wonder what is such a deep flaw in me that I can't experience that. Through all of that mess, I came to find myself alone in a hotel room with a married man. He had kids, he was a ministry leader, and it was to pray. Yes, he prayed, and then he propositioned me for sex, openly, blatantly, and it was only by the grace of God that the clothes did not come off my body. God delivered me from that moment, but it kind of rocked my world. How could I have let myself get in that situation? Why was I so vulnerable and getting so close to something I said I would never do? And the emotional toll on me of that moment was very, it rocked me. I had to deal with the stuff in my heart at that point. I realized if I were ever going to become the kind of person I wanted to be and that I knew God wanted me to be, especially in the area of relationships and intimacy and sex, I had to deal with some stuff. And that was one of the triggers that led me to do that. I had to look at the holes in my heart that remained unfilled. I had to look at the walls I had built around me. I had to look at the wounds I had experienced, the sexual wounds I had experienced that had been all messed up with God talk and abuse. That was a whole lot of mess. I had to look at the religious messages that, although in some sense were not false, they were very incomplete and skewed and did not provide a picture that was consistent with what God designed sex to be. I had to rework all of that. In doing so, some of it was hard. Some of it was painful. All of it, however, was healing. As I worked through my stuff, it wasn't like Jesus was doing something in me with an arm's length transaction. I had to let him get right here. Now, I'm a medical doctor. That's part of what I do. And so I picture it like Jesus was like a heart surgeon. I had to let him get in my stuff, in my business, like opening me up and getting his hands inside me, dealing with what was under the surface. That was a process. And I am so grateful that I went through that process. When God did bring my wonderful, loving husband into my life, I had dealt with so much of that in the past, and I am 100% convinced that if I had not dealt with that stuff in the past, I would not have been able or ready to have a healthy, intimate relationship. But I also knew that that was the past. What about the future? I still did not have a positive framework in my mind, a picture of what true healthy intimacy, whether single or married, was like. I had to do some more learning at that point. And for the 6 months prior to my wedding, I marinated in the Song of Solomon. I lost count of how many times I read that book and just soaked in the very graphic depiction of intimacy as God designed it. Of course, there were other biblical principles as well, but I just had to soak in that. And that is how I found myself once again alone in a hotel room with a married man. But this time, everything was different. Because I had dealt with the stuff in my heart and dealt with the walls around that I had built around my heart, I was able to enjoy my husband. The walls had come down around my soul, and so now the clothes could come off my body. Seeing and being seen, knowing and being known, and not ashamed. My wedding night was beautiful. Now, there were certainly more things I had to learn about myself, about sex, about relationships, about God, and I did. It was a loving marriage. All marriages have challenges, and ours did. But during the years that we were together, before my husband passed away and went home to be with the Lord, we enjoyed beautiful intimacy, including sexual intimacy. I am so grateful for the pathway that God took me on, that I had looked at my story and dealt with my stuff before I entered into marriage. I know that made the relationship I was able to experience with my husband so much deeper, fulfilling, beautiful, satisfying, the way God designed things to be. I know it's not that way for many people. I had to look at my sexual story, and I want to invite you to do the same. Whether you've had so much sex you can't remember how many people, or whether you've never had sex at all, whether you love sex or are addicted to sex or hate it, or whether you're married and enjoying it, or married and not, or single and wrestling with your sexual drives, whatever your brand of stuff is, you have a story. Looking at your sexual story, getting under the surface, and then giving Jesus the opportunity to do his work in you will change everything. I'm inviting you to come to yoursexpectations.com. That's an online course where you will be able to take the steps to look at your sexual story with both honesty and compassion. You'll invite Jesus into your story. We have some very practical ways to help you do that. And then you'll be enabled to write the next chapter of your story with hope going forward. Yoursexpectations.com. Deal with your stuff. And whether you're married or unmarried, you can pursue healthy, godly intimacy the way he intended. Yoursexpectations.com. God bless you.